Welcome to Truth, Money, and Freedom. Today is Monday, the 19th of August, 2019. Okay, gang, I wanted to cover a little bit here on this tariff stuff. Stocks climb as Ross confirms another 90-day delay on Hawaii blacklist. Well, without reading the article, which I don't think is really necessary here, what this is talking about is a 90-day extension on most electronics coming into the United States from China, a 90-day delay on the tariffs. And this is actually kind of important. This is something that, we didn't see coming, with Trump, being tariff man, actually trying to actually spur some Christmas sales. In other words, keeping the markets up, keeping the people happy. And once again, I'd like to go through this tariff thing again real quick if I can. I won't go into extreme detail. When China started trading with the rest of the world, or in specifically the West, that was 1971. That's when China was approached by Nixon to actually start participating in world markets. America wanted access to the cheap labor in China, and so did the rest of the world. Because that was what they could offer the world, was cheap labor. Once again, a communist, regime over there, brutal, and cheap labor all around, and a lot of it. They've got a huge population. So that benefited China by bringing jobs to China, and that benefited the rest of the world by cheaper products. Now, by far and large, the cheaper products didn't necessarily really help the consumer. What it did help was the U.S. corporations and other corporations moving into China, and then it helped the bottom line of those corporations because a lot of those savings didn't translate into lower prices of product. Okay, so from 1971 all the way to 2000, China was a trading partner with the world, and what China got in 2000 was most favored nation trading status. And what that gave it was an emerging market advantage of basically low tariffs anywhere they send product. While China can maintain huge tariffs on countries that they're trading with. And this is where we have been since 2000. It's been, and that should never have been allowed, in my opinion. So how many presidents have we gone through that have let this persist? Number one is Clinton, because this happened on Clinton's watch. This was spring of 2000, so this was before the election with Bush. So of course Bush let it persist, Obama let it persist, and then Trump is the first president to actually start talking about it. Now, granted, I'm going to give Trump credit where credit is due. This had to be addressed, but I don't think he's addressing it the proper way. He's addressing it kind of as a bully. And there are other ways of addressing this. There are many ways of actually addressing this without, coming across as a bully with a big stick. And he campaigned on this, understanding, of course, that there were countries that were taking advantage of the United States. Well, that is kind of true, but it isn't at the same time because they're getting, worthless paper dollars in exchange. So who is actually taking advantage of whom? Well, the fact is we're bleeding dollars out of the United States through trade deficits every single year. And as you know, if you have a checking account, if you're actually writing out more checks than you're depositing, eventually you'll run out of money. Well, not the U.S. government, because they can just continue to borrow excess money every single year, as we have been doing. To make up for that trade deficit, but that also increases the debt of the United States. Now, there are other things that participate in creating the United States debt. So I don't want you to think that I'm just talking about China or even trade in general. We spend more money than we make on many things. For instance, the welfare state. This is something that doesn't produce, therefore it's just a cost. So there is no benefit to the taxpayers for the actual welfare system. And I have talked to people that literally say, now I have to think about this too, that prevents them from rioting and turning to crime. And that may be true, but that's not the way I kind of look at things. Um, so, okay, I'll go back here to what's going on here. Okay, so Trump is really all about this and about the stock market because, remember now, this is an illusion. Okay, and I've said that, ad nauseum. But you have to remember, Trump, for him, this is kind of a reality show. If you have ever seen him at, any of his rallies, and he never stopped rallying. Since he's been elected president, it's just a long string of never-ending rallies going all over the United States and pumping up the people and appealing to them on a very emotional level. Um, but I don't know what to think of that other than I've seen other presidents do it, but not anywhere near the extent that Trump is doing it. But what he's doing in the background with trade wars, with making phone calls to banks after bad days on the markets, we're talking about, the six major banks that own the Fed. Um, there's definitely some very, very interesting stuff going on in the background to keep these numbers green eternally, at least during his tenure, to just keep the market going up. And once we lower interest rates some more, and it'll go up again. That's what the stock market wants. It wants, 0% interest rates. And in fact, negative interest rates is ultimately what the government wants because that will force all money into the stock market, into a risk environment where there is yield. Okay, now I've covered that part so I could get to this part. What Trump is actually doing is, number one, creating the perception that we do have a wonderful, wonderful economy here in the United States, which is not true. We don't. Our economy is very, very fragile right now. It's extremely fragile. And the other thing it's doing is it's preventing out the clearing out of non-investment. Or I'm sorry, not non-investment, but malinvestment. So what do I mean by that? How does that work? Well, this has to do with what we call the business cycle. Since we have a central bank that actually totally controls interest rates and the printing of money, the end result of that is a business cycle and boom to bust cycles that can happen anywhere from every 5 years to every 10 years, and somewhere and it's usually seven. If you take a broad average across the last 107 years since the Federal Reserve existed, um, 106 years actually. We just have these boom to bust cycles. And that's because when you have interest rates being jury rigged by the central bank, the U.S. economy is totally managed by the central bank, which of course is managed by the six big banks. And those six big banks have changed a little bit over time, but not in any drastic way. What you get is a lot of money going into bad places where money should not go, but they're looking for yield. It's not about propping up a good idea or investing in a new technology necessarily or anything good. It's literally about trying to find yield. Now, yield comes in many forms. It can come from the bond market in the form of yields, which the bond market is very interesting. Basically it's getting to the point where it's not really worth investing in. But look what's been happening lately. The 30-year that was at literally 1.98 a few days ago is back up at 209. They're trying to heal the curve, the inverted yield curve. Does that really help us? No. The yield curve has already spoken. The inverted curve has already spoken. That means a lot of rich folk, a lot of people with wealth out there are literally betting that it is better and safer to go into bonds than it is to go into stocks. Even though if they buy a 30-year treasury, they're only going to yield 2.09% a year. Or in the case of Friday, 1.98% a year on that 30-year treasury. Now that's a very low yield, especially when inflation is 10%. So it's a numbers game at this point. Will they make more being 8% below the rate of inflation, or will they make more literally going into the stock market? Well, when the rich people do that, when they go into these quote unquote low yielding devices or products, they think the stock market is going to crater, and so it's going to go down. That's why you have a yield curve inversion like that. And what they're basically saying is, we just don't trust this market anymore. It's probably going to crater. And if I have all of my wealth in that stock market, and if that Dow goes down 50%, it'd be better to be making 2% a year, losing 8% to inflation, than it would be to lose 50% by being in the Dow. So that's how that's how the mechanism works. And when things look really dicey, generally you'll have bond money going right into precious metals. And that's something that we have been seeing slowly but surely this year. Precious metals are on the rise. Gold, 6.5-year high. And then silver at, it's over a year. It's a year and 2 month, year and 3 month high. But they've been taking hits lately. And that's because of this. So the jawboning going on by Kudlow, Ross, Powell, and Trump are basically steering people right back into the stock market. That's what Trump wants. He wants everyone in the stock market. So why does he want everyone in the stock market? Well, for two reasons. Now, this gets into speculation. Now, the fact that he wants them in the stock market, that is not speculation. That's very easy to see. And then there are those behind him that want everyone in the stock market too. So, but now I'm going into speculation. Why does Trump want everyone in here? Well, number one, it increases the green days, obviously. So the perception of the economy is good during his watch. But also, too, keep in mind, this is nothing but a mechanism to take from the middle class. This is a giant casino. And by the way, the bonds don't operate quite that way, so we can't really say that about the bonds. But this is a giant casino, gang. Trump knows all about casinos, trust me. And the House always wins. And who is the House? The House is literally big businesses, CEOs, captains of industry, and banks. That's the House. Those are the people who will win this game right here of the indices. So this is why I've been saying, and once again, that is conjecture on my part. So I don't want you to think that I know that that's exactly what's going on here, but it makes sense to me. And I've thought about it and thought about it because the malinvestment in the indices is incredible. Now, I know that PE ratios are not supposed to matter anymore, and that's all we had to go on. You take away the PE ratios, we have nothing left for figuring out if we're in a bubble in the stock market, except for one thing, is that how many ounces of gold will it take you to buy a share of the Dow? So once the Dow hits a 1-to-1 ratio with gold, then we know that gold is possibly in a bubble. So let's take a look at that right now, shall we? Let me get my handy dandy calculator up. 25,886.01 divided by, how much is gold? $1,509 equals, okay, now it takes 17.15 ounces of gold to buy one share of the Dow. So you see what I'm saying? This is all we have left, gang, because PE ratios clearly don't matter anymore. People are going to invest even though PE ratios are 90, 100. In the case of Netflix, 400. 400 years to make your money back on your investment based on current earnings. So this is what I'd like to show you with this video is when we know the Dow is in a bubble. And then when we know gold is in a bubble. It's an inverse thing. Right now, 17 ounces of gold to buy one share of the Dow. So what we're looking for is that number to continue to go down, by this number going down and by this number going up. And that's when we know gold is in a bubble, is when we're 1 to 1, I believe. Or, it could be that 1 to 1 will be the new ratio based on the money printing that's been going on in the United States. And for now, let's just say that 1 to 1 is where it should be. And then that's when basically gold is actually at its proper value. One share of the Dow for 1 ounce of gold. Okay, all right. Well, that's all I had to cover for you guys today. But I know I'm taking a slight different direction here with the channel. The purpose of this, once again, I don't want to be a guy who's known for perpetuating fear porn. I am not that way generally. I mean, you guys know the economy's in bad shape, and the yield curve inversion has happened. So that means, and by the way, Chaos Craig corrected me the other day. Anywhere between 3 months and 24 months is where we can expect the extreme firework activity in the economy based on the yield curve. So historically, it's happened anywhere from 3 months after to 24 months after, 2 years after. So anywhere in between that. And in fact, this time is so different, we might say that it could happen literally any time up to 2 years. And why do I say that? Because the debt levels of this nature have never, ever been seen before. $250 trillion worth of debt around the world. And also, too, there is a new number for negative yielding bonds in the world. 17 trillion. So there's still articles out there saying 13 trillion. And the new number as of February was 15 trillion. And now it's actually 17 trillion worth of bonds in negative yielding territory. That includes Germany, Sweden. I mean, there's several countries that have negative yielding bonds. So this is something that I will keep on top of for you guys. I don't know that we need to continue talking about, how bad the economy is, though, because everyone should know that this is all fake, and start preparing for when the curtain gets pulled back on this fake economy. So yes, I suspect in the next several months to touch the old highs and the new highs in the Dow and the Nasdaq and in the S&P, but it still doesn't matter. It still doesn't matter. What we're waiting for, or what I'm looking for, is when money starts going out like crazy out of the bond market. That's what we call the wealth transfer. Wherever that money goes, to whatever assets it goes into, is going to do very, very, very well. And I suspect, and that's been my conjecture all along, is that is most likely going to be into cryptocurrencies and precious metals, two undervalued assets. And I know that there are some of you that hate crypto and hate when I talk about crypto, but I will once again remind you guys, I'm talking about surviving what's coming here. Sometimes we don't have the luxury to say, well, crypto is just another digital illusion of wealth. It won't matter when hardcore currency goes into it. The value will go up dramatically, and that can help your family survive. So that's what I mean by this. I personally, I trust precious metals way more than I do cryptocurrencies. But at the same time, I have to give cryptos their due because they are an undervalued asset. They are an asset group now, whether we like it or not. Okay, gang, that's all I have for you today. And once again, sorry about the lack of videos lately. And like I said, it's my work schedule, and so that will continue for another minimum of 2 weeks, and then I should be able to start creating a little more videos so I can give you guys some more information. Okay, you guys all have a wonderful day. May God bless each and every one of you.